celebrating 30 years of phenomenal trend forecasting. Here's Gerald Celente with today's trends in the news.
Hi, this is Gerald Celente. It's Wednesday, March 4th, 2020, and here are some of today's trends in the news. On the market front, over there in Asia, a little mixed. Over there in Europe, up, up, up. Over here in the States, bada boom, bang, boom, up. And gold down a little bit, oil down. So what's going on? Stocks surged on Wednesday as major victories from former Vice President Joe Biden during Super Tuesday sparked a massive rally within the healthcare sector because of Obamacare. I don't care. Ain't nothing about that. All that does is make the healthcare sector richer because we, the little people, are forced to buy healthcare from private corporations. But those are just facts, all you liberal folks. How Obama folks us all the time. Remember, folks? Yeah, folk you. Yeah. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average soared 1,173.45 points, or 4.5%. And that's the second highest point gain ever. So, what else happened? Oil prices, still down. But even though the market went up, hey, how about that plunge protection team? You think they had anything to do with it? And with Biden, we'll talk more about that later. Goldman Sachs is saying that oil in April is going to be $45 a barrel. Brent crude, it's a little over 50 now. And Morgan Stanley says for the year they forecast Brent crude to be $55 a barrel. That's going to hurt a lot of oil-producing nations. And it's really going to hurt the fracking industry. They're going to get fracked, folks. Market is skeptical about Fed's cut to quell illness impact. Okay, yesterday in your Trends Journal, you got it all. History before it happens. As this happened, we were on top of it. And by the way, we also said what would happen with Super Tuesday. Imagine that. They call voting for these clowns Super Tuesday. Well, it's the presidential reality show, the greatest freak show on earth. That makes it Super Tuesday. Anyway, investors, gamblers, are skeptical that the interest rate cuts are sufficient to protect against a slowdown due to coronavirus, especially after Mr. Powell acknowledged after the rate cut announcement it was not clear how long the impact of the virus would last. Now, they're coming back on March 18th, the Fed. They're going to be meeting again. This was off the books when they just lowered the interest rates 50 basis points. So will they lower them again in a couple of weeks? Well, we'll see. And Fed's $100 billion repo intervention falls short of bank demand. Big banks' demand for central bankers' cash remained very strong on Wednesday today, leading the Federal Reserve Bank to add a fresh $100 billion into the financial system. What financial system? For the gamblers to go gamble. They asked for $111.48 billion. The Fed only came up with $100 billion, so they came up short. This is what's also driving up the markets. More cheap dough. Global central banks poised to follow U.S. move. ECB and Bank of England expected to take immediate policy action on coronavirus impact. They're meeting next week, the ECB, and market watchers are expecting a rate cut of 10 basis points in the Eurozone. The rates are already at a minus 0.5%. The Bank of England is also due to meet later this month, and they're expected to cut rates by 25 basis points. More cheap money, more cheap money. So, energy shares, rebound is derailed. I'm mentioning this because it's really big. It's not only all of these energy-rich countries that rely on high oil prices, like Saudi Arabia, which they say needs Brent crude at $50 a barrel, and now, at $100 a barrel, and now it's around $50 a barrel. Energy shares in the S&P 500 is falling significantly more than the broader index, losing 7.4% in the past 5 sessions. The coronavirus has also tampered down oil demand, with countries taking steps to dissuade or restrict travel. That's right, restricting travel. Energy stocks are closely tied to oil prices, which have fallen more than 20% this year. Hey, but those healthcare stocks are up. So even before the coronavirus epidemic, investors were skittish about the sector, which has been the worst performing sector in the S&P 500 for the last 2 years. Got it? Before coronavirus, everything was slowing down. Again, it's in your Trends Journal. India suffers setback in effort to escape severe slowdown. Nothing to do with coronavirus. Growth in what was, until recently, the fastest growing large economy has tumbled in the past 2 years to a 6-year low of 4.7% in the last quarter of 2019, before the coronavirus. And again, we've been writing about this. It's a global slowdown. This coronavirus thing could really be deadly into the economies of the world and the equity markets if they keep pumping it the way they are now. Fitch, the ratings agency, trimmed India's growth estimate for the period to 4.9%, down from 5.1%. South Africa tumbles back into recession. All right? Again, nothing to do with the coronavirus. And on to some other news. Insulin maker Novo Nordisk wages on weight loss drug. The world's biggest insulin maker is betting it can unlock a multi-billion-dollar market that has largely eluded the drug industry: obesity. Many doctors are convinced that lifestyle changes, not drugs, are a better answer. Why, how dare they? Pharmaceutical drugs are the best for you. Why, those doctors should be punished. Vaccinations and pharmaceutical drugs. Don't take care of yourself. They'll handle everything. They're expecting big sales from this. I'm mentioning this because the obesity rate in America now is over 42%. That's the obesity rate. And it's like growing in all countries. So these drugs are going to be big sales. And talking about drugs and chemicals, former chemical industry executive is Consumer Safety Agency nominee. President Trump has tapped Nancy B. Beck, a former chemical industry executive, to lead the Consumer Product Agency. Hey, remember Trump the Hump was going to clean the swamp? Yeah, he's filling the swamp with more swamp creatures. The facts are there. And of course, yesterday was Super Tuesday in the United States of America, ruled by the Democrats and the Republicans. And what happened? Just as we wrote in the Trends Journal, before the election happened, what would happen? And you saw it. That Buttigieg guy bowed out. Where'd the votes go? To Biden. That Amy Klobuchar, or whoever, she bowed out. Hey, she's from Minnesota. Oh, yeah. Biden won Minnesota. Oh, and that guy, Beto O'Rourke, you know, the guy that went nowhere, that used to talk like this and jump up on everything. Yep, he came out for Biden. Biden got Texas. So, and Bloomberg spent over $500 million, and boop, he bowed out. Warren, reminds me of my 10th grade English teacher, the senator of Massachusetts, she lost Massachusetts. And again, as we wrote in the Trends Journal, they don't want Sanders. If she wasn't in the race in Massachusetts, Sanders would have gotten it. So they don't want Sanders. It looks like Sanders is out, and it goes back to our top 2020 trend forecast, Trump by default, default of the Democrats. And very important, Biden is going to be a real loser. And he could also go down so low that the Democrats will lose seats in both the Senate and the House. Because Sanders would have gotten the young people out to vote. Biden's not going to do it. And what else do we have here? Oh, you know the big news. Coronavirus fears empty streets in some of the world's busiest cities. All right? Italy closes schools as death toll hits 107. 107 in a country of over 60 million people. And you got to get to the end of the article and you read this. A top civil protection official told AFP that most of those who have died in the past 2 days were in their 80s and 90s and were already suffering from other pathologies. So they're already very sick. Oh, you know what else they're doing? Can't kiss on the cheeks no more when you say hello. No shaking hands. This is amazing what's going on here. The instructions urge people to stay at least a meter, 3 feet apart, and to avoid crowded places whenever possible. The government also recommended that those over 75 to stay indoors and avoid public places. Whew, I made it by 2 years. If I go out to Italy, I could go out. And reading on, the problem for the Italian government is that existing restrictions, including the quarantine of 11 towns with some 50,000 people in the north, have failed to stop the outbreak. So all these measures that they're taking amount to zero other than controlling the people. This is government control at the maximum. Coronavirus. 3 New York schools closed after Westchester County man tests positive. And the schools they closed are in the Bronx. Westchester County, 1 million people. One guy gets it, they close down the schools because the kid went to one of the schools. Amazon employee in Seattle office tests positive for coronavirus. How many employees do they have? California announces the first coronavirus death, bringing U.S. fatalities to 11. 11 people in a country of 327 million. United cutting flights in April amid coronavirus outbreak. This is going to hurt big time. Virus pushes aviation sector into crisis zone. Airport stores suffer amid a decline in terminal foot traffic. College admission tests are canceled. Several college admission tests have been postponed in some international locations amid the spread of the coronavirus. And that other article about Italy, you can't go to stadiums, they're closing down, you name it, anywhere, any place. They're killing business because not that many people are being killed from the virus. Epidemic clouds sales picture for retailers. This is not an epidemic yet. Could it be? Possibly. But hotels warn of hit from epidemic. The hotel industry, decade-long run of growth and rising revenue looked vulnerable at the start of the year. Yes, before the coronavirus. Now, the spread of the coronavirus threatens to make it the worst performing year since the Great Recession. Seattle urges people over 60 to stay home as much as possible due to coronavirus. So I guess I couldn't go out in Seattle. The cities are empty. Restaurants. People are canceling parties. They're freaking out over this thing. But good news. New York Governor Cuomo confirms 5 new cases of coronavirus. Quote, "This is literally like trying to stop air," end quote. This is the imbecile speaking a little like stopping air, like hot air coming out of you know what. New York State, 20 million people. 20 million people. 11 cases. And now, Cuomo expands emergency powers. Andrew Cuomo signed a law that expands his emergency management powers, a move that drew bipartisan criticism. Yeah. A little clown, like in a country, in a city, in a state near you, now exerting full power over the people. And what are the people doing? They're buying into the bullshit. You got it. Again, am I wrong about coronavirus? Is it going to be deadly? Not according to what's going on now, not according to the reports. Mostly, again, people that have already been ill are going down with it. 18,000 people died in the United States already this year from the flu, but 11 have died in the year since the coronavirus. Any American can now be tested for coronavirus. Vice President Pence says, isn't that great? You can get tested, and I can too. This is a test. Where's this going? It's going to really hurt the global economy. How long will it keep going? I have no idea. The markets are going to be artificially propped up. As we wrote in the Trends Journal, refinancing of mortgages is going to go way up, and that's already starting to happen. And watch people starting to move from densely populated areas to more rural areas, because they're spreading fear. It's the coronavirus 9/11 spreading terror. This is Gerald Celente, and that's some of today's Trends in the News.